What's going on, guys? I was thinking about something today, and I posted it on Facebook, so I figured I would share it with you guys. Um, so I just read this year. I read the Old Testament fully through for the first time, and I learned a lot about like the heart of God, and like when you talk about like wanting to know God, the New Testament is great. It'll let you know, like, it's kind of like reading the end before you kind of read the beginning, right? And then you read the Old Testament, and it's like watching the prequels, right? And you're like, oh snap, this is how we got here. Um, and then it adds more weight to, the sequels and all that other kind of stuff, right? I guess you could say we're living in the sequels right now, even though the sequels were horrible. But back to what I was saying. So I posted this on Facebook earlier because it was really interesting. But so as I've been reading the Old Testament and as I read the Old Testament, I learned a lot about the heart of God and like who He is, what He cares about. And one thing that really stuck out to me was that a lot of times we equate how we view God and like His love with our parents' love. And it makes sense because we pretty much form our ideas of love from our parents, right? But a lot of times that can either, if we had great relationships with our parents, then it's easy to conceptualize that. But if we didn't, it's easy to be like, well, if God is like a parent, then I definitely don't want that love. But God even says in this verse I want to read, this is in Isaiah chapter 49, it's verse 15. This is Zion saying, and he says, Zion says, the Lord has abandoned me. The Lord has forgotten me. And this is what God says to them. He says, can a woman forget her nursing child or lack compassion for the child of her womb? Even if these forget, yet I will not forget you. And this is one of my favorite parts right after that. He says, look, I have inscribed you on the palms of my hand. That metaphor is absolutely amazing and like gut-wrenching. And it's crazy to know because a lot of times you'll see when, people, especially if you've gone through things like abandonment and you have a fear of being alone and loneliness and stuff, people will tell you, oh, don't worry, like God's with you. He's always with you. He'll never forget you. And I find it's easy to just kind of brush it off when other people say it to you. And this is why I think reading the word, and before these days, I guess you could say in my life, people would always say, oh, make sure you get your word, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. And I understood them, but I just didn't apply it because I'm just like, oh, well, it doesn't have to be about how often I read my word and stuff. But now I have a whole new lens on it. And it's like how to say like, okay, to say that I can get to know God without hearing what He said and learning what He said, and it puts a whole different take on it. I think the word is like the most important thing, especially for new believers, to get in and to stay in. And even mature believers, like just staying in your word and making sure that you are grounding yourself in truth means so much, because I can easily look at my circumstances and I didn't grow up with my biological mom, so it's easy for me to, I have all these things inside of me and memories and stuff that, can easily sway me towards, oh, well, God's love is like this and God's love is like that. But when I read what He said in His own heart, and He says, I will not forget you, even if your parents do, right? Even if these forget, He's talking about the woman in the lines before, even if these forget, I will not forget. And it's a whole different like thing that wells up inside of me when I know that like God Himself is saying this, right? But again, a lot of times we just hear what people tell us that the word is saying, and we say, oh, that's nice, I'm so glad it says that. And then we go about our life living in the same fear and same things that we had, right? But I just think it's so much different and so much more weight when God says it directly. And so I would encourage anybody listening or going through anything, it's gonna sound so redundant, and I believe that it's worth it right? Because I spent years and years and years, right, just not reading the word. Years and years and years not reading the word. I listened to pastors, I listened to all types of stuff, never read the word for myself. And I don't believe that anyone can read this book front to back and not be affected or changed in some way by it. And so I just encourage all of you guys, if you haven't read the book, please read it. And ask God directly the questions that you have, and I promise you, He's going to give you some kind of answer. Because when I was reading it, I just kept asking why the whole time, and taking the questions directly to Him. I'm not saying don't go to other people. I'm just saying read it for yourself and ask the questions, and then after that, you can hold what you read up to what people say, and then it's easier not to be swayed. And so this video has gone longer than I wanted. I wanted to share that with you. That meant something to me, but it also showed me how important reading the word was. And so I encourage you guys to do the same. Happy Sunday. Peace.